Welcome to another episode of the Roundtable. Hopefully you guys are okay with the background. Got a little bit different.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love it. So,
I mean,
it's all good.
Ben's got some big changes going on in his life, so we're making do with what we have so we make sure we can bring some content to you guys.
A little bit of different change, nothing. I would say nothing too big, but I guess
it's a pretty big change.
It's a pretty big change, I guess. So
it'll get announced here in a little while. So
yeah. But yeah, I've been crazy busy, man. It sounds like you went out to what was it called?
The Muddy Dash.
The Muddy Dash
up in Midway. That was actually we had no idea what to expect when we walked into that, and I felt like there could have been a little more mud, but honestly, it was a lot of fun.
How was the weather? Because it's pretty high elevation up there, right?
Beautiful.
So it kind of cools off a little bit. And I know here I think it was like high 80s, but it felt okay. So I'm wondering over there was probably perfect, right?
Oh yeah. So we actually went up because they sent this thing. They're like, oh, go do a pre-registration. So we went up last night, dropped the kids off for their sleepover with grandma, so we didn't have to get them up early and everything. Went up there, got up there at I think we got to the place at 7:15.
Oh, nice.
Massive line. We didn't
already
leave till 8 o'clock.
Wow.
8:10. And they're like, it'll be faster, which when we showed up this morning, we're like, we probably could have paid the extra $5 and just done it in the morning, not dealt with it. But the weather, I looked at Soph because she was all upset about it for a minute. And we actually talked about it today. And she's like, it sucks that we did that, but I'm glad there's nothing we can change about it. If we lived closer, we'd have just dealt with it. But we're up there. It's an hour. I'm like, you got to remember, we didn't have kids. So we weren't trying to deal with our kids running around, being crazy, bugging us. And the weather was freaking perfect last night. She's like, all great points. What can we do? And then headed up this morning. We came up on that wreck on I-80. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't.
Semi hit the barrier.
Oh, no.
His trailer crossed all of Parley's.
Really?
Headed down the mountain.
Oh,
yeah, it was pretty bad. We rolled up on that. I guess it happened at 4:30, and we rolled past it at 7:30. So it was
you guys are going east, and he was going down.
Yeah,
coming
luckily
west.
And
wow.
Yeah. You know how big of a transport route that is. So
yeah.
There were so many semis just
There's
parked.
so many accidents up there.
Oh yeah, people go crazy.
They go crazy down that part is canyon.
Yeah, I got up there. The weather was perfect. The mud run was a lot. It was a lot more fun than we were anticipating. So it was a good time.
I love that. Yeah, that's good. And it sounds like you had good company. So
yeah.
That always makes
it worked out awesome.
Activity even better. So
yeah,
good.
And the crowd was good. There was a few guys. We got to one obstacle, and there was, for some reason, it was super backed up, and everybody's like, "Man, what? Just jump in." Everybody's like, "Come on, jump in!" And people just started going, and
there you go.
So we got the line moving, and then after that, we didn't have to wait for anything really. But
love it.
It was a lot of fun. The crowd, one guy took off running up the hill. He's like, "There's only one way to go up the hill and take off running." I was like, "No, there's two. You can walk."
There you go.
Goes, well, you got a fair point there.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool. I didn't know, but Utah's a big activity. I mean, obvious activities, but marathons and a lot of running activities that they do and shows and events and stuff like that. And not only in Salt Lake, but I know they do Moab and St. George and all these different things. But yeah, that's super cool, man.
I don't think I would want to run in St. George or possibly Moab because of the temperatures. But
that's what they do it. That's why. It's
but
it's the extra limit, that extra switch. So
that uncomfortable moment, that uncomfortable limit. Yeah.
So man, look, let's jump right into the topic of today.
What do you got?
You don't even
know.
No,
I was gonna say, what do you got?
You don't even know.
It's even better.
But and this kind of popped up for me today. I was kind of thinking about it, and we're not gonna dive too much into current events. We all know kind of what's going on, politics and all that type of stuff, right? So we won't jump deep into that. But it got me thinking because we were kind of talking about that not last weekend, but the weekend before, right, when we were kind of all together. And I had multiple conversations with different people, and generally I tend to stay away from those topics because they're,
iffy.
They're iffy depending on the person. And I'm not one to really argue with people. I'll give you my point, and I'll listen to your point too. But I think so. This is what I wanted to talk about because I know that you and I we're very similar in some points, but we're two different people, and I don't necessarily have to agree with everything you say or do, and vice versa, right? You don't have to do that same thing for me. But so I'm kind of touching on this topic because I feel like nowadays we've lost that, where I feel like
We can't have a discussion.
we can't have a discussion, and I guess the question is how do you handle so like I said, you and I might not have the same idea or the same perspective on a said topic. How do you navigate through that, like you personally with other people, and not let it affect your relationship with said person? Because I think a lot of times people tend to, well, I don't like this person anymore because they think that way, or they look at you a different way because you are not in the alignment of that they're doing.
I guess that. Well, so if you're talking me 2 years ago, it would be a different story than you're talking about now. But if you're talking about me now, it's how do you say this? Because we were actually talking about this a little bit earlier too. But I rather enjoy conversations with people, whether you like what I have to say or dislike what I have to say. The more that I learn from somebody, the better off I can be, and that's how I kind of look at it. I try not to judge that person based off of their views.
Mm-hmm.
I try to judge them as an overall, or just not judge them, period. That's your choice, that's your view, that's your life. I don't care. And we kind of had a conversation with one of the kids at my work.
Mm-hmm.
And I say kid because he's like 19.
Oh, okay.
So he is pretty young. We kind of, one of my coworkers asked him, hey, just kind of a general, what side are you on? He's like, I'm not really on either.
Mm-hmm.
And, kind of led to the conversation about, and I'm like, look, I'm not trying to tell you who to vote for or anything, but I will just tell you, I started thinking about it. I'm like, you got to realize he was between 11 and 15 when Trump was when Trump was in office. He would have been 11 to 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy to think about.
It was.
That's a mind fuck right there.
Now that you're thinking about it, makes me feel extremely old now that I'm thinking about it. But I'm like, you have to think. I said, I'll lay out the examples of what it was back then, because you've been driving through through the Biden administration. So you have a little bit better understanding of what that is. Okay.
Right.
I said, and I said, I'm not trying to tell you who to vote for or how to do it, but I want you to just so you have an idea, gas cost me this much in my truck. I could pull my trailer fully loaded, go camping for this much. I can't go anywhere for less than 100, period. And it was a good conversation. I mean, he doesn't have a whole lot to say back, but I'm not judging him for it.
All right.
But I like to have those conversations with people. I like to have the conversations about what lifting is better, what politics, or what all of it, because I can learn something from somebody, but I try not to judge them.
So you feel like it's a mindset shift, because you said 2 years ago it would have been different.
Oh yeah, 2 years ago I'd have just judged the hell out of you.
Right.
If you even maybe a little bit longer than 2 years ago, if you don't think my way, I kind of would judge you that way. But now I've learned that the more opinions that I can gather and the more facts or information I can gather, the better off I'm going to be, not only as a person, but as somebody that can go out and have more conversations with these people. And they might tell me something. I'm like, that's a valid point. Right. Because I'll do politics. There are some policies, and I'm not going to say which, and I don't, because off the top of my head, I really didn't research for all this, because I had no clue what you were going to ask me. But, there might be some things that I'm like, yeah, I could agree with why the Democrats want to do this, or I can agree with why the Republicans are going to do this. Yes, I'm going to go one way or the other, and if you know me, you know where I'm going.
Right. But
that's kind of, I would rather have that conversation and be like, hey, well, why do you feel that way? Why is that such an important issue? Why do you hate that? Why are you so against this? Why are you so against that?
Right.
I would much rather have that conversation and be open to hearing the answers, especially in the mindset I'm in after going through that last 75 and everything. I'm so much more open to what's out there in the world and what's going on, especially because I'm more confident in myself. Right. My looks, my feelings, everything. Between everything I'm doing for myself, I'm more confident in myself. Right. I feel better. I don't care as much what people, I never really cared as much what people thought of me, But I'm down to have these conversations with people. I love having conversations about that stuff.
No, I love it. Yeah, I think that's definitely the way that I attack things too. You know what I mean? I think I look at it as like, and I remember where I heard it from. It was somewhere I can't tell you who, but I heard it. It was like if you're having a discussion with somebody on on the same topic, but you're on two different ends of the spectrum, you should actually welcome that, because if anything, it's just solidify your position in what you believe in.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to worry about getting moved off because you're so concrete on your position, but you also will gain a perspective or understanding of why they think that way. And you can take that to another discussion to, if you have that similar discussion with somebody else, you're like, oh, I totally understand that you're the second person, the third person that I've heard that from. Now you start gathering information that makes sense to why somebody would view that perspective in that manner versus yours in the way that you view yours. So I agree with that. It's all about information gathering and talking and discussing, and it doesn't need to turn anything other than just having an understanding for each other.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately that gives you the chance to go sit down and maybe research that topic or that information yourself to say, "Oh shit, I can actually get behind this for this reason."
Right.
Rather than just being like, "Nah, F this, I'm not." Yeah. And I don't see a reason to be mad about it. That's your opinion. I've learned a lot of that too from you through doing all this. Like at the end of the day, that's your opinion. That's your choice. That's your life. How you choose to live it and how you choose to go about your stuff, that's completely up to you.
Right.
I'm not your mother. I'm not your father. I'm not your parent. I'm not your brother. I could be nothing to you. But if I can hear your opinion and understand it, great. Let's have a conversation about it. I might not have all the facts of what I'm saying, but if I'm confident enough, it's going to sound great. I can promise you that. I'm good at that.
Well, I think that's part of the solution as well, is understanding that not everybody has all the answers to that, whatever subject you're referring to or talking about. We could use lifting, right? If you have an ego when you come into lifting and you're like, I know the set all be all, what it needs to be. This has worked for me. This is what you need to do. There is fundamentals to everything, but outside of for lifting, I mean, it's really for every different person, it's a little bit different.
It is.
And, depending on what, if you want to be an athlete, you're training a whole lot different than you're training to just have a physique that looks great, or if you're training for bodybuilding, if you're training for, if you're a fighter or like an MMA or boxer, that's a whole different training. You're doing more cardio. If you're a runner, you know what I mean? So it's not one size fits all, but you can definitely take different techniques or fundamentals from other lifts or other gym people to understand and build your own, schedule or workout for yourself and whatever's working for you, your schedule, your life. And so I think that flows into everything. Like,
Yeah, it does. And to build on that, I use, an app, go through, have my workout plans, my food and all that. And, I have an advisor that I can work with. I was talking to him. I'm like, well, do you have any like other suggestions? He's like, honestly, at what I can tell from what you're doing, you're above these are just guidelines. Like right. This is just basic stuff. You can do literally whatever you want. From what I can tell from talking to you and everything, you have a very good understanding of what you're doing in the gym. Now it's just time for you to take it. You can continue to use our platform or you can continue on your own. Either way it works, as long as I mean it does. I love having the fundamentals, and
but you have to be willing to
but I love to learn.
Talk through that.
Yeah.
You have to be willing. It goes back to the initial question of, how do you handle, when you don't, said perspective doesn't align with yours.
So much better.
And it's just have to be able to be open to listening to that other perspective, to that understand. Just listen to understand, and not to be defensive in the fact that they're trying to prove you wrong.
And see if this will align with what you're asking too. But you also have to, when you approach somebody to talk about something, you have to have an understanding of what they're doing or what they're talking about in order to have a good conversation too.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about this because I was watching some girls do an exercise I do all the time, and I could tell one of them just looked super, super uncomfortable. And it's something that I've watched multiple videos on, and I've, done a lot of it, and I kind of know the focus of how it's supposed to be. So I'm like, hey, and I approach them with the same understanding that they might have an understanding of what they thought they needed to do. Like, hey, would you mind if I offered you some advice? Fully expected a no, but they seemed happy with the advice I gave them.
Right.
But if they'd have come back and been like, hey, I mean, I hadn't really thought about that, but if they'd have come back and been like, oh, I like your advice, but I'm doing it this way because of this reason or that reason, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to have to try that next. Which, I mean, that's anytime anybody says anything like a workout in the gym, I'm like, I'm going to have to try that next. Why were you doing? Okay, I'm going to have to try that. I understand what you're saying. I've never tried it, or I had tried it and had an issue, but I'm going to try it that way, do a little bit different on my focus of it. But
it goes back to the mindset and the perspective of that you have to go into learning. It's both ways, right? Because just say in that scenario, right? You walk up to them, they say, no, I'm actually doing it because of this. Now it goes back to you, and you said the right thing. Like, oh, like I never thought about that. Like, now if you're not in the right mindset, you're in the I'm just want to show them how to do it right. I'm right. This is the way you're supposed to do it. And they hit you back with that feedback. You're like, okay, whatever. And then you just walk away. Like, what the fuck are they talking about? They're doing it wrong. Goes back to you having that same mindset of like, I'm willing to learn from somebody else, even though I quote unquote like am an expert. I kind of know what to do in this sector, this exercise, even though I know what to do and I'm going to show them because I can obviously see that it's wrong. Your willingness to walk away to say, maybe I might learn something out of this situation as well, is a huge like factor to that. And it's all talks about the mindset that you're in and receptiveness,
Yeah, this actually kind of goes along with it. I saw a video and it was talking about how, being uncomfortable is learning, which it's true. You have to get uncomfortable to learn. And that's a great thing. I love learning. Like, I hated it in school, but my mindset's 10 times different. I love learning, and I know once I stop learning, there's an issue. I need to figure out why I stopped learning. I don't care what it is in my work, my current profession. I don't care what it is. There's something to learn. And the more I try to learn new things, the more I can realize that certain people are refusing to learn new things. Mm-hmm. Which in turn is, I mean, I can't control it. It's not my fault. But the more I learn, whether it's talking to people, reading something, the more I learn, the better I get, period. Mm-hmm. And I'm openly welcome. To answer the question, how I handle it now is exactly how I explained it. If I walk up and you said I'm doing it for this reason, I'm now questioning you. Now I'm the student. You're the teacher. Tell me why that is better for me.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm going to give that a fucking try and see if that does better for me or if the way I'm doing it worked better for my body. Because again, like you said, everybody is slightly different when it comes to the gym. You can have the fundamentals, but at the end of the day, you have to find what works best for you. Sometimes I have to push my shoulders up a little bit differently because I have shoulder issues. Same with, I think you have them too, or knees. You can't quite do a squat, so you got to find a different way to make that. If you want that exercise, you have to find a different way to do it. But the basics, the fundamentals, but you can learn something to do it a little bit different way.
I love that. And that can be applied to so many different...
literally anything.
Anything that you can pick a topic on. And I was just wondering about that. I thought I think it's important nowadays to have that knowledge and that perspective of, hey, like it's okay for us to disagree, but come to an understanding of where each other's coming from, and not have to feel like we have to yell at each other, or I don't have to judge you or dislike you because we're not seeing the same perspective. Now, that can lead into other things, but at the end of the day, it's more of just having a better understanding for each other.
Just to say it blunt, that's a problem with society right now, period.
Right.
Everybody is entitled to their own opinions. And that's what I tell anybody that tries to argue with me. Look, that's your opinion. I get it. I don't care.
Right.
That's your opinion. This is my opinion. These are my feelings on it. and you're allowed to have yours. You know, me and the wife talk about it constantly. I'm like, look, get it. That's your feelings.
Yep.
I'm allowed to have mine. Just because our opinions are different doesn't mean we're both right or we're both wrong. Because at the end of the day, that's not necessarily true.
No, there's always a
There's three sides to every story, you know.
Both can be right.
Yeah.
Both can be right, depending on the perspective of that person. And so, I just thought it was important. I think it's an important topic. I think a lot of times people, like you said, they're willing to say their own truth and not listen to somebody else's. I think that's where we fail to grow with each other. Because sometimes maybe, you know, if I was ignorant or not as educated as somebody else, but I was speaking on something, I wouldn't take offense to them educating me, making me smarter. Said I'm saying the wrong things. You know, let's just use relentless. You know, if Tim Grover reached out and I was like, hey, I listened to your guys' podcast and you know, kind of listened to the summaries, and you know, you're kind of missing some of the things that I talked about. I take that with open arms. I wouldn't take it as a disrespect. I'd take it as like, look, I'm growing. I'm learning from somebody that knows specifically on this topic, and that's the form and the way that you need to look at those things. Is, you know, don't be so closed-minded to the fact that somebody's educating you or giving you more knowledge than you have currently. That's you should be seeking that. I should be seeking to get around people that are like, hey, like, you know, that's probably not the right way. You should do it this way. And we can have an open discussion and bounce things back and forth. But if I'm just thinking that I'm right, like, you're not gonna get around the right circles, and you're not gonna have open discussions to be able to grow.
No, not at all. You can't. I mean, if Tim Grover reached out and said you missed something, I would be elated and be like, dude, I'm ready to learn from you. You know, but anybody, I'm not closed-minded to learning anything, period, because I want to learn. I want to learn new stuff, new tricks, new tips, new this, new that. There, you know, in my workplace, and I tell it to everybody, you know, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? You need to find out what works best for you. There's going to be 7 of us. There's, I think, 9 or 10 of us in the shop. 9 or 10 of us are going to tell you different ways to do things. At the end of the day, they all get the same result. But you need to take what we're teaching you, and you need to learn the best way for you.
Right.
Kind of the same thing. You need to take both opinions or all opinions, and you need to find an opinion that works best for you, that matches what you feel in your heart, your gut, your desires, whatever you want to say, call out, all that, any of that. You need to find your truth, and you need to stand by it, but you need to be willing to learn what other people have to say, because you don't know, that might change your truth a lot.
Right. I love it. No, man, that was really my question. You know, it was really just based on that. I think, like I said, just the way that things are going, I think it's important for people to understand that and be willing to even hear this message and say, like, hey, I'm, you know, willing to listen to others, off. And you find out that you're wrong, like, then you were wrong and you learned something.
Just fucking admit it too. Like, if you find out you're wrong, just admit it. Be like, yo, I'm wrong. Because honestly, you just learned something.
Yeah.
You just learned something. And that's the end result, is that you're learning something. I mean,
I think it goes back to ego, right?
Yeah.
People just don't want to take that hit of like, I made a mistake or I was wrong. But ultimately, that, like I said, all goes back to, that's what's going to help you grow. That's going to help you be better. If you're willing to just blatantly ignore somebody that's trying to help educate you, you're setting yourself up for failure and in a moment of non-growth, and just willing to remain literally ignorant and not progress in anything that you're doing. So I think that's the way a lot of people just take it. It's just like, I'd rather just not know, and whether know my truth and have everything else, but it's not going to help move everybody, the whole community forward. It's just not the right approach.
It's like we talked about in the failure and quitting. See, you said failure a few times, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, you know, that it's great. Failure, I feel like, is a word that is used oddly now, the more I learn about it. Because when you fail, you should be learning a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, what you were saying, they're quitting
Yeah.
because
that
they're
makes sense.
they're choosing to not learn that lesson. Because as we've learned, failure's the greatest teacher.
That's the good one. Yeah.
Yeah, failure's the greatest
sure.
teacher because you learn your mistakes. But that's, again, you have to be open-minded enough to say, look, I fucked up. Here's where I went wrong. I know I went wrong right here. I'm going to be better next time, or I'm going to do this next time. And this is the hardest fucking lesson I think anybody will ever learn because admitting it is first step, and following through is a pain in the ass because old habits do die. They die hard. It's hard to change habits, but when you start changing them, holy shit, you start learning. So again, all back. Be open-minded. Learn.
I love that.
I
agree.
love it.
I agree. It's quitting, not failing.
Yes.
That's a good correction. Yeah. I like that. I love it. That's good,
I
man.
mean, failure is the word that fits great in the sentences you said.
But
don't get me wrong, because if you'd have said quit, it'd sound weird as shit. But the
failure's growth.
Yeah, failure is growth. It's when you fail and you quit that's where you fucked up.
Love it. Cool, man.
Well, just a short one for you guys today.
It's a short one, guys. Well, thanks, guys, for another episode here at the Round Table. And subscribe, like, share, all the beautiful stuff. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Challenge is pretty simple, guys. Be open to listening and learning from people. There's nothing really else to say. Have the conversations, but put your fucking ego away and just have the damn conversations. So
love it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.